Yeah, Chuck, and I was just thinking about just the experience I've had with you over the years. I mean, I remember we were at that town hall that we carried out in Las Vegas with Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, and later, of course, the first Democratic presidential debates in 2020 season. Those 10 candidates. What do you think was missing as far as just structure of debates?
Well, it's hard to structure when Donald Trump's involved, in fairness to the debate moderators. Do I wish there was sort of like, okay, we're going to focus on this issue, Yeah, I do. But again, as much as I could sit here and say, well, I'd have done it this way. Donald Trump is this sort of, he's just somebody that brings chaos to a situation. So I think any other set of candidates, you would have wanted a more structured environment. You'd have probably wanted, okay, let's spend the first 10 minutes on inflation. Let's spend the next 10 minutes on the border. Let's spend the next 10 minutes on reproductive rights. But that's just not something that you do that we've been doing in the world of Donald Trump. And I think that's the challenge in putting on any event that includes Donald Trump in it.
Yeah, and Alencia, what stood out to you from last night's debate?
Listen, so many things stood out to me. Vice President Harris looked very presidential, but she commanded that stage last night. And not only the way that she delivered her vision for the future of America, this opportunity economy that is inclusive of everyone, even the way that she non-verbally showed up. She commanded the stage and the viewers from the moment she walked in and actually forced Donald Trump into shaking her hand. And, the thing I appreciated is that what she was saying was her vision for America. She was talking about the plans around the economy, around abortion access, and yet her nonverbal communication is what showed us her reaction to Donald Trump. So she was able to speak to us in two ways. I do think that Donald Trump was extremely rattled, right? At one point, he was the disruptive candidate, I would say in a negative way, the disruptive candidate in our presidential politics. But Vice President Harris showed that she is actually the one that is disrupting this notion of who should be in leadership, who should be in power. And the reality is she has this broad coalition that she was able to speak to all the way from, progressive left to Republicans who are tired of Donald Trump. And so I appreciated the way that she held her own in the debate. And I also appreciate the monitors for correcting the record on some of the outlandish things that he was saying, particularly about eating dogs and cats. And it was really helpful to see that, the two contrasts and the two choices that the American people have in the upcoming election.
Yeah, John, you've been on, both sides of the debate stage, right? And I'm just thinking what Alencia's talking about. I mean, just the fact that you have to sit there and discuss whether people are eating dogs or not is just mind-blowing, but it's what it is. And I'm just thinking, what did you take away from the debate, John?
Well, I think it's a matter of who gains. So did Donald Trump gain? Of course not. He didn't gain last night. He was sort of a darkness that surrounded him, and the comments about, eating dogs or whatever. I mean, just only out of Trump, right? And sort of diminishes, the former president. I mean, the presidency itself. I get nervous about that. But she definitely gained. And I agree with Chuck from the standpoint of she's gained, but she's going to have to do a lot more. Now the question is, it's a follow-up. She's going to, I believe, has to sit for some more in-depth interviews, but she definitely put herself in a position where she can be viewed as a president. And she was very stable. She did a good job, but not as many specifics as you would like, not enough explanation for some of her switches in order to get people who are these undecided voters out there. So remember, Trump's got his people and she's got her people, and it's that fight for that percentage that's still on the fence. And I think that the more she can appear, people will get more and more comfortable. She now can win this election without doubt.
And Alencia, one of the things she was very specific on, clear and concise, is her attempts to hold the former president accountable for the patchwork of abortion laws across the country. Take a listen to this.
You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot? She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term? They don't want that.
Alessia, how do you think voters saw this?
Well, listen, as someone who has worked in the reproductive freedom movement, I worked at Planned Parenthood. She has been a champion even before she became senator, when she was attorney general. And voters are listening. They remember those stories. And it's not just Democratic women. It's not just independent women. But even Republican women who are trying to find a home can hear themselves in that conversation. And so I do want to push back on this notion where everyone is talking about Vice President Harris didn't give specifics. She gave numbers around the policies that she is believing will help the economy. She also talked about abortion access. And if she wasn't talking about policy, she was humanizing the issue. And it is really challenging that Donald Trump doesn't get the same smoke from the media and people who are saying that they want to hear more from Vice President Harris when he has never rolled out any policies. But he has, cozied up with the people who created Project 2025, who are going to have people monitoring women for the decisions about their bodies. And so Vice President Harris is giving us specifics. And it feels very much that the bar is higher for her, given that she's a woman. And yet Donald Trump, the bar is so low that he just gets to skate on by with no specifics at all. He does a lot of media interviews, but again, doesn't give specifics. She does one major media interview, gives specifics, gives them at her rallies. She's completely disciplined. And so we saw that again last night. And I need for the people who are paying attention to this election to start actually thinking critically, why aren't we asking Donald Trump the same questions about specifics that we are demanding of her?
Well, and, Chuck, one issue where Trump couldn't give any specifics is if he'd veto a national abortion ban, for example, if it reached his desk, if reelected. Here's part of that.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to your desk?
Well, I won't have to.
If I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it.
Chuck, what's the theory or the political, focus on this?
Look, I would just want to step back because the moment, I think that moment captured why Joe Biden couldn't beat Donald Trump and why Kamala Harris can. Joe Biden couldn't utter the word abortion, couldn't say it, couldn't talk about it. She put it in personal terms. She humanized it. And then she did a little bit of branding, which we're normally used to the right being very successful at, and started calling them the Trump abortion bans around the states. And that has the potential to be sticky. I think of all of the back and forth, this was the most substantive. And this was a reminder, I think, why so many Democrats were convinced Biden didn't have what it took to win this campaign, because you needed to make reproductive rights among the front and center issues. He was uncomfortable speaking about it, you could tell. I mean, I'm just thinking about just the anecdote she shared. Joe Biden never would have been able to bring himself to share that anecdote. On the specific, I cannot believe among the biggest unforced errors of the night was Trump's not letting that hang out there that he would not veto an abortion ban. Frankly, it's sort of a cheap way out for him. It could have been an easy way out for him to continue to muddle his position. And it's such a head scratcher considering where he was 10 days ago when it looked like he was trying to figure out how to come out against or how to come out for the abortion amendment in reproductive rights amendment in Florida. And then suddenly his campaign team said, all your volunteers are going to quit overnight if you do this. So then he reversed course. I think that moment and his inability to promise he would ban an abortion ban, he would veto an abortion ban, I think you're going to see that in more ads than anything else from that debate.
Yeah, and John, before we go, just if you could put into some kind of context, this whole issue, you're from Ohio, right? And this whole thing that the former president went on and on about that migrants are eating people's pets.
Look, I think there's an extremism here on immigration that is just, it's not, frankly, part of what the culture of America's been. And, I mean, he's trying to stoke everybody's fears. It's part of the reason why I've never been a fan. It's this divisive nature that if I can lay this out and scare people, then we can make these folks who come here the enemy. We all know the border needs to be secured. We know that. But we also know that we've had a history of allowing immigrants to come into our country legally. In fact, when I was governor, I said, look, if anybody wants to come here who's an immigrant, we want you to come here. We want you to be part of our economy, be part of our culture, of our society. So I think this is some extreme way to try to frighten people. And those claims to me, when I heard it, I just couldn't believe it. My wife was in another room, and she was like, what is going on here? It's this effort to just demonize anybody who comes into this country, and I think that's a sad state of affairs.